If the Prime Minister did say something about his favorite Digimon, that would be much better than everything else coming out of Japan right now.
Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on.
Run. Welcome to Pottages, your friendly 8-legged dog bus companion through the 2020 Digimon Adventure reboot. This week we're discussing episode 42, King of Inventors, Gerbemon. I'm your host, Jeff Uberg, and for my guest this week, I'm excited to welcome back musicology expert and Anime News Network reviewer, Rose Bridges.
Hey!
For a quick refresher for everyone, it's been a long time since you were last on episode 6. Can you give, for the audience, like a quick refresher on your Digimon backstory? Like, particularly, what's your favorite season, and who's your favorite Digimon character, and why?
So I, as a kid, watched Adventure and a little bit of O2, dubbed on whatever the channel was back then, 1999 or whatever. And then as an adult, I revisited Adventure a few times, and I watched all of Tamers, which I really love. That's probably my favorite Digimon season, and I've watched a few of the Adventure movies. So my favorite character is easily Koshiro, so I'm excited to talk about him in this episode.
Nice. So I was really interested to get your perspective on the show again, in particular because you haven't been following, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to see that kind of like fresh perspective, especially because like growing up as kids, we would have tuned into random episodes here or there, and I think that's especially in this arc of the show, it feels like it's designed to not really require tons of knowledge of what's going on around it. But I did give you a couple episodes that might have been of interest to watch beforehand. And you watched episode 14, Koshiro's first full focus episode, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious what you thought about it.
I liked it. I liked this episode more than that one, but I liked that one still had this sort of theme of like, his knowledge, his intelligence is what evolved Kabuterimon into, what is the Japanese name again? Atlura Kabuterimon.
Yeah, like Atler Kabut. I think it's supposed to be based on Atlas, but they just can't spell Atlas, so.
Yeah, Atlura Kabuterimon or Mega Kabuterimon. So I liked it. It was just weird to be like rewatching, like, geez, they're already doing Ultimate Evolutions at episode 14.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested. Were you surprised or confused by the fact that like that Ultimate Evolution was so early in episode 14, and now we're on 42, which is 28 episodes later, and it's still Atler Kabuterimon?
Yeah, I mean, I have they said if they're going to eventually get to the mega evolutions for like characters for like other than Gabumon and Agumon? Because that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's been pretty like foreshadowed in the show itself, and also there's like promo artwork for the season that came out a couple weeks ago that shows all the mega forms. So
okay, cool. I mean, I want to see Mega Kabuterimon get to Hercules Kabuterimon, but of course I especially am excited for Palmon's mega evolution because of its name, Rosemon.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm not surprised they're still there. I figure it'll probably be like a last arc thing, like surprise that isn't really a surprise. But like, it's just weird that like all that stuff happened so early, because like I remember with the 90s one, like that felt like such a big milestone when they finally got to ultimate level, and now it feels like, oh, it just happened.
Yeah, like in the 90s show for the other kids, it was like basically the culmination of their character arcs, and now it's like in the show is like it was the introduction kind of like
Yeah.
It feels pretty low stakes or like easily earned.
Yeah, and I have really fond memories of the episode where Koshiro gets Mega Kabuterimon for the first time in the 90s one, the Fatamon episode, because I think that was like it was a really nice episode to watch if you were the kind of kid who was always told to stop asking questions and stop being annoying with your need to know everything. My parents weren't like that, but school I was often treated like that, even by my teachers, weirdly enough. You'd think they'd want to encourage that, but apparently if you ask too many questions they get annoyed. But anyway, that Digimon episode was very encouraging to me, because it's all about how curiosity is great and you shouldn't let anybody tell you not to, even with bad Zen philosophy or whatever the heck Vetamon is doing there.
Yeah, it's like a good look into like what makes Koshiro strong, because without that he like it's just like sad to see him.
Yeah, Though sometimes you do need to clear your mind like that, though,
Oh yeah,
because if you're an adult and you don't learn how to do that, then you develop an anxiety disorder. So I've also been trying to do more of that too, but not at the expense of my good brain qualities.
yeah. So I wanna give a room for you to ask any questions about like what's going on in the show at this point. But before we get into that, I wanted to give you and listeners who maybe are checking in now, who haven't been following every single episode, a quick 90 seconds, a quick 60-second recap. I'm going to try and get through everything that happened since we first met Mimi in episode 6.
Okay.
Putting the clock at 60 seconds. Okay. So Sora and Taichi just met up with Mimi. They meet Joe and swim across the sea. They meet Matt in Storm Fortress. Ogremon appears for a rematch, but then Metal Tyranmon appears and kills Ogremon, and it's sad. Taichi never gives up, so Metal Greymon appears. The group decides to split up for no reason. Matt isn't a horrible friend. Mimi demands revenge for a robot friend. Sora saves some bees. Izzy functions without Wi-Fi, and Joe defends a bridge, so they all get their ultimate forms. Taichi's group ends up at Tokyo, but it's fake Tokyo, and it's the reason for the blackouts, and everyone else is there too, and they defeat the big bad guy, but Devimon flings everyone except for Tai and Matt to the real Tokyo. But TK gets pulled in instead. Tai and Matt find TK, and he meets his partner Angemon, but Angemon dies, but he comes back as an egg. But Mennonite steals the egg, but Tai and Matt get some upgrades, get the egg back. Devimon evolves a couple of times. Tai gets eaten. Agumon evolves into Machine Germon. Angemon calms him down. Agumon briefly evolves into a Greymon and saves Tai. But then everyone falls off the continent, then floats onto a turtle to the new continent. Kari creeps on the other kids, and they all get pulled back into the digital world. Mennonite splits everyone up and steals Kari. Tai burns down a fortress, and Agumon evolves to a Greymon for real. Tai finds Kari, but she goes inside Mennonite. But Mennonite is Tailmon. Tailmon makes them swim to the ocean. Kari is nice to her, so Tailmon evolves to Angelmon. Koshiro says the ISS is going to fall, so they fly up to the sky, and Agumon gets a fourth Mega Evolution. Mimi is Jeff Bezos, and it's kind of funny. Gabumon gets crucified, and Joe studies. French fries get canceled. Sora likes soccer a lot. TK and Matt go to amusement park. And there we are. That was a little over 60 seconds.
That was a lot.
Okay.
Can you explain more about the circumstances of Agumon becoming Machine Germon?
Yeah, so there's actually not a ton more to that. I mean, so like they're fighting against Devimon, which also weirdly like they build up to Devimon for at that point like 20 something episodes, and then Tai and Taichi and Yamato fight Devimon without everyone else there. It's just Taichi, Yamato, and Tucker. And yeah, Devimon evolves into Neo Devimon, and then they defeat Neo Devimon, and then evolves into Dun Devimon, and like Tai gets eaten, and then Agumon's really mad about that, so he evolves in like a dark evolution kind of.
So it's like the Skull Greymon thing.
Yeah, it's like the Skull Greymon, and it had kind of been foreshadowed for a while because in Metal Greymon's evolution sequence, there actually was like a flash of Machine Dramon until that episode. So it was kind of like a neat little Easter egg that everyone knew was coming. And it's kind of like a neat like reversal of the like everyone remembers War Greymon defeating Machine Dramon, and it's kind of cool.
I also feel like it makes more sense than Skull Greymon because like I'm sorry, but Skull Greymon always obviously looked like a bad evolution. Whereas like I feel like Machine Germon isn't quite as obviously evil in its like visual design at least. I don't know. I remember as a kid I was so terrified of Skull Greymon, and then like a little bit older, like Skull Greymon for some reason became like an inside joke with my sister and me about how ridiculous looking he is.
Yeah, Skull Greymon has no chill.
Yeah, he has no chill, and it's just I remember Tai is like, is this Agumon's evolution? It's like, yeah, dude, this doesn't seem right, does it?
Yeah, and Machine Germon's an interesting concept for like taking the metal aspects of Metal Greymon to the extreme.
Yeah.
But it was pretty disappointing in the end because it didn't really have any basis in character. Like it happened, like Taichi doesn't even remember it because he was eaten, and Yamato like saw it happen, but like doesn't even really mention it to Taichi later. And like
that's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like the oh my god, what's what I'm looking for? It's representative of the show's like focus on action spectacle over characterization.
Yeah, because I like that Skull Greymon was a result of sort of like Tai showing the negative side of his crest, like being impulsive and pushing Agumon when he wasn't, ready for that. So I liked how it was always drawn into character stuff, the way they evolved. And so getting rid of that, I guess it's still part of Agumon getting angry or whatever, but like that doesn't seem to make as much sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. But were there any other parts that sounded intriguing or made you curious?
Not particularly. That was just the one that really jumped out to me.
I think the one like big quote unquote divergence the show has had is that like Tailmon Gatomon doesn't have the like Wizardmon backstory anymore. Instead, like they meet an enemy Digimon they fight for a while, who then turns out to be Tailmon. But like also the way that's handled is so vague, and like for like an episode or two, the show itself doesn't confirm it, but the recap in the beginning does. Like they meet Tailmon inside that Dark Knightmon figure, and then the next episode the recap's like, and it turned out that that Dark Knightmon was Tailmon. It's like, wait, the show didn't tell us that, but the recap did? What?
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I'm sad about them not including the Wizardmon thing. That was such a touching part of the original.
Yeah.
I pet my personal Gatomon while listening to that.
But I think that the show recently has been on an interesting uptick with the like last couple episodes have been these like very episodic, more fun than other episodes and more character focused. But they've also like a lot of people are now complaining that they're filler and everything. And it's like, yeah, they are filler, but like
Sometimes filler is good.
right, sometimes filler is good, but I also feel like this is something I'm sure we'll get into in this episode. I'm like, did we actually learn much about the characters in these recent episodes? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's on without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode 42, Kingdom Inventors Gerbemon, aka Weekly Shonen Dump, aka Trashy Dr. Stone, aka Garbe Diem. And spoiler policy, like always, we'll be talking about everything in the Crunchyroll episode, including the title and preview for next week, and anything in the original adventure whole season, but no titles or synopses for episodes beyond next week. And if we talk about any late stage plot reveals in other Digimon seasons, I'll give you a fair warning. And a quick recap for what happened in this episode, not like that speed 60-second recap, but so Taichi and Koshiro scout around the camp and come across Garbemon and Shumon in a junkyard. Koshiro bonds with Garbemon over science, and Garbemon explains how things started falling from the sky recently. Raymon attacks, Greymon and Kabuteimon aren't able to defeat him, and then later at Garbemon's lab, he explains how Raymon killed all the Chumon, and then Garbemon freezes Raymon, but then Raymon evolves into Rare Raymon, and then Garbemon mentions how Raymon has been consuming oil lately, which gives Koshiro an idea, and through complex MacGyver shenanigans, basically ends up solidifying Raymon with a oil solidifying powder. And then they defeat Raremon, Chumon is inspired by Koshiro, and evolves into Searchmon. Yeah. So, so Rose, what were your impressions of this episode, especially diving in fresh?
I really liked this one. It felt a lot more like an original adventure episode. I love like seeing Koshiro get to just geek out, which he does a lot here, being so impressed by Gerbemon. One thing I always think about is like I always thought Raremon's name was weird, and when we're going into this, I was like, maybe it's something different in Japanese, but it isn't. It's Raemon.
Yeah. Especially, I was like, there must be some like etymology there, and the Wikimon entries usually have a like a detailed etymology of like, and for this one, it's just like based on the English word rare. And it's like, great, that does not help at all.
Why is he rare? Like, he's just the Digimon equivalent of Grimer or Mach. I guess is Raremon is Mach. Or Garbodor, especially especially the giant version in the new games where he like has a whole city that he's like brought into his garbage dump.
Oh, I haven't seen the giant version. Oh wow,
something to look forward to if you ever play Sword and Shield.
But yeah, especially Raremon is like, we just gave up on naming him. Like,
he's even rarer now.
Yeah, I think like I was alluding to before, I think it was a really fun episode, but I'm kind of like, and it was nice to see like character focus for Koshiro, and it was nice to kind of like see him in his element and like doing that MacGyvering of things. I think that's an aspect of the franchise that I I don't think was ever in the original show, but was kind of how my imagination thought about things. Like when I was in like 5th and 6th grade, which I guess would have been like seasons 2 and 3 were airing, Adventure 02 and Tamers, I was a part of a like online Digimon RPG forum game thing. And like, I think the way that game worked, it was supposed to be pretty simple. It was supposed to just be like you had Digimon that had levels and you would level them up and then you would do these like story battles. But I think the way it was supposed to work was just you would say your team and then a mod would come in and be like, okay, you won. Yeah, your levels were higher. You won. Okay. But what I would do instead would be, okay, so I have these guys and I do this tactic and they do this thing and they fly over, and I would create basically a scenario like this where it's like using environmental things to somehow win the day. And so I think it was kind of cool to see that, like, I think as a kid I would have really appreciated the episode because it's like not just Digimon randomly fighting, it's like doing somehow the human is actually winning the day as well.
I liked that Koshiro's sort of ingenuity came into this, so it wasn't just about who has the more powerful mons.
Yeah. But like as much as it's nice to see Koshiro in his element, I feel like it didn't really add to our understanding of Koshiro. It's just kind of like, yeah, he's good at this stuff. He continues to be good at this stuff. Cool.
Yeah, although I'm trying to think like how much he grew as a character in Adventure because it always felt like relative to some of the other ones, he was smart. He had some family stuff going on to the fact that he was adopted. He often, but he was always like really confident about being smart. And I feel like what like his thing was about being integrated into the group more and, listening to other people who are different from him. But once he got over that, I kind of felt like he was a static character. So I don't know how much depth is there to him. It's weird to say this with my favorite Digimon character, but I feel like I always liked him because I identified with him, and not because he's like a particularly like complex character. That's more like why I like the characters in say Tamers.
Yeah, but I think it like especially in those early episodes, I guess until he kind of like once he like resolves things with his parents, it doesn't really come up again. But like until that point, like it's interesting. Like even that early episode, the very first episode where Kabuterimon appears, it's like he's really confident, has all these skills, but he also has these trepidations and like is anxious about things, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah, you're right about that. He is kind of socially anxious in some ways. Like I think part of why kids a lot of kids identified with him who are nerdy is that he really got that combo of like being really confident about knowing stuff like facts and stuff, but not so confident about how you deal with people and like having a lot of bravado over your knowledge to sort of help you deal with that.
yeah, and I guess the show has at various points shown him being like nervous around the other kids, so it's at least
Yeah.
shown that.
It's interesting to me, like, and I think I mentioned this when I was on the Mimi episode, how like some of the characters like Koshiro and Mimi have qualities, their crest qualities are like things they're already good at. Like he's already really knowledgeable. She's already really sincere. And then some of the other ones are like things they have to work on, like Yamato with friendship. So like it's interesting to me, and I think in Yamato's case it gives him a much more dynamic character arc than like some of the other characters where it's just about showing what they're already good at.
Yeah, and I think there's some interesting nuance in the original adventure to how like Koshiro's like the time when like the crest activates and every time when a Megaterramon appears, it's
Hmm.
not like a moment of Koshiro like being the smartest, or it's a moment of like him kind of like giving up that unique trait and like
Hmm.
maybe kind of like as a metaphor like acquiescing to the kind of like especially the Japanese mantra of like the what's the phrase like the square peg fitting in a round hole
Yeah.
like hammering everyone down to be the same, and the moment he does that gives it up and then learns how wrong that was, and like Mochimon's like calls out to him and he like realizes what makes him special and unique and like embraces that special and unique side of him. That's what makes him like activate his crest.
Yeah, I think that like that episode I think was meaningful, as I said, to lots of nerdy kids because like we often were told that we had to fit our square pegs into round holes and stop, like it was our nerdiness that was the reason people didn't like us, or like in knowing too much and whatever. So yeah, I like that it's like he gets the wrong get buys into Vedamon's stuff, which of course helps him because without his knowledge, Tentomon de-digivolves. And then, like, yeah, he has to realize, actually, this about me is great. So, yeah, it shows there is some darkness in him where he's susceptible to that particular kind of argument. Although, I mean, he's also coerced into it for particular reasons that are unique to that episode, if I remember correctly, that didn't just have to do with him being, like, socially anxious or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something about, like, Tentomon, Vedamon was going to hurt him or something. I think, if I remember correctly, it's been years since I watched this episode.
Yeah, there was some weird Demi Devimon antics and like
Yeah.
yeah, something about like they were like selling bird poop or there was something weird going on about that scenario.
Yeah, and his like curiosity was like a solid thing that was put in like the like shop
Yeah.
that Devimon ran or something. I don't know. And so then like Mochimon had to like find it.
Yeah, but this episode was I think it was also interesting how like reframing Garimon, who I mean it's spelled Gerbemon, but I'm just gonna pronounce it Gabemon because that's
Yeah.
how it's pronounced in Japanese, and they just I don't think know how to transliterate or
Yeah.
romanize very well.
It's always really noticeable when the katakana comes up and you're like, that's not really what the subtitle's saying.
Yeah, I think so. Gabumon is okay, one thing, but this is my own pet peeve. But I hate transcribing a chu as tu or tyu. So seeing
Yeah.
Chumon spelled as Tiumon, I'm like, Just a very,
Yeah.
very deep sigh.
Yeah, there's no need for that.
Yeah, it's like, I
Also,
hope
it's
people.
like it's a mouse, and isn't that what they like mice say or whatever? That's like Pikachu is Pikachu.
Right, it's like I can understand some romanization schemes where it's like, okay, maybe, but like the thing is, Chew is a very recognizable sound because of Pikachu. Like everyone knows
Yeah.
Pikachu, so like,
Yeah, it feels unnecessary. So they don't want to acknowledge their competitor and the monsters that evolve.
uh, that would be the Galaxy Brain. Like,
No, I'm just kidding, but like this is what I thought of. Also, while I was watching the episode, I was like checking my Pokemon Go and like feeding my Farfetch'd or whatever, which is my current partner on there because I want to evolve it. And then it's the new Farfetch that's fighting type, and so like I was feeding it berries, and I had the episode going in the background, and I'm like Pokemon and Digimon.
speaking of merchandising tie-ins, the moment where Koshiro finds a little USB stick in the middle of the episode, and that is a product you can buy. It's a thing that you can load into the new Vital Bracelet semi-virtual. It's a virtual pet slash fitness tracker, and you can load in little memory cards like that to add new Digimon to it. And I guess they just really want to show it off in the show. So
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they would have something like that because, like, I feel like I've heard that that kind of thing has come back, at least a more high tech version of this sort of Tamagotchi type thing. And I know that Digimon, I think, started as one of those, as
mhm.
like a Tamagotchi type, virtual pet thing. I just don't understand why anyone would be into, unless they have a way to get around the whole you leave it at home when you go to school and then you come back at the end of the day and it's dead. Because, like, I remember that happening when the original Tamagotchis were popular because like we would pay so much attention to them during class that they'd ban them from school,
Oh yeah.
and then like they wouldn't. Then we'd have to leave them at home and they'd be dead.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that was such a craze, and it was basically like just I don't even. I think I like we'd have to like hide it in our pockets, but I think also for me it was like a craze during the summer, and by the time the school year came around, no one cared anymore, so it wasn't much of a problem anymore.
Yeah, so many fads were like that. Like I remember that my sister we had these friends who were going to like some day camp with us, and we'd play Pokemon all the time in the car, and it was on Gold and Silver at that time. And one of them like temporarily traded my sister his Celebi, but then when we saw them again, when school started again, they lost interest in Pokemon. So that's how my sister got to keep a Celebi on her Pokemon Silver game, which I think she still has somewhere.
Oh, that's nice. My
Yeah.
my flip side horror story version of a similar experience is that I had a friend who had I think it was Pokemon Blue. Wait, no, we didn't get Pokemon Blue. Pokemon Green. Wait, did we?
No,
Yeah, we
we
had
did.
Red and
We
Blue.
got blue. Green was the
Right.
one that Japan had.
Right, so we had blue, and so he had a Pokemon Blue version that had all 150 Pokemon, and he lent it to me to play with the agreement that like I wouldn't save, like because I didn't have a Game Boy, I didn't have the games or anything, so I borrowed his Game Boy and borrowed his game, and was like, I'm not going to save over it. This is like really important to, I'm not going to save over it.
And then you
And
did, right?
well, I changed boxes, the
Oh
PC
no,
box, and
yeah.
it was like it prompted like this is going to save, and I was like, it doesn't make any sense. That can't be right. I'm just going to change boxes, and it saved over it. Like,
Oh no.
but he didn't seem to mind so much, so I guess it wasn't that big of a deal. But I was like, oh no, what have I done? This is terrible. But sorry, back to
Yeah, we're
Digimon.
getting to the wrong monsters.
I appreciate that like Garbemon, like there were several moments in this episode where I was like, wow, he looks so evil. I kept worrying he was gonna like take a turn and betray them, or like like sinisterly like take hold of Kushiro's laptop or his Digivice or something and be the ultimate villain. But no, he was good hearted in the end and was basically not even redeemed because he was heroic throughout. Although I did kind of wonder, like he had like an army of Chumon quote unquote assistants, and
Hmm.
he did care a lot about them. But I'm like, were they slaves? Were they test subjects? We don't really know.
Yeah, yeah. Although it was really chilling seeing that image where you had all of them, and then all of a sudden they disappeared because Raremon.
Mhm.
But yeah, maybe like what's Gerbemon doing with them?
Well, so I'm curious that image of like going from like all the Chumon there, and then it's just the one left, and Kushra reflecting on that, and I forget exactly what he says, but he basically is like he implies that he like has some kind of emotional connection to this idea of being left behind. And I mean, just to give you some extra context to the rest of the show has not given any even hint at Koshiro being adopted in this version.
Hmm.
But I'm curious if like seeing that line, did you think that was maybe referencing that. Like I'm thinking maybe he was in foster care in this version or something.
Yeah, maybe. I'm curious if they do anything with that because, as you said, this version's been a lot less character focused.
Yeah.
Maybe that was just an Easter egg for those of us who watched the original Adventure.
Yeah, that would make sense. Like, have it not actually be, have it just be like, oh, he was touched by Chumon's story, but then like, wink, wink to the old school fans.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, that's what I keep wondering with this is like, is this intended for the old school fans who watched this in the 90s, or is it intended for like a new generation of kids? I'm inclined to say the latter,
Yeah,
but it feels like it keeps throwing in little Easter eggs for us.
yeah, I think it's definitely the latter, and I think riding on the just the extra boost that for but the extra Easter eggs gives it, so that like kind of like launching an entirely new kids franchise these days is probably so fraught and so competitive. But like if you can kind of do that basically as rebooting a current one, like that gives you a built-in audience, and then but really you care about the kids.
Yeah, which I kind of wonder about. Like, I don't know if I'd have been into Digimon as a kid if not for the character stuff, if it was
Yeah.
just as action focused. But then again, I was into Pokemon, which is like dumb action. So who knows?
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I wonder how much it would have been more or less appealing at that age. But I think it definitely would have been something that I already struggled with as a kid, like discovering Digimon like fourth grade, and then by seventh grade being like, I'm way too old for this. I'm way too cool for this. And it's a secret shame. So like I think if it didn't have that character development, it would be even more of a like thing that you grow out of.
Yeah, which I was thinking about that with like I didn't watch Tamers when it was airing because I was in middle school by that point and I was like I'm too cool for Digimon now. But then then I watched it as an adult and I was like this is really more of a middle school kid version of Digimon. It's a lot darker. I should have watched it in middle school. I was watching other cartoons so that were not as good.
So okay, I'm curious as someone who studies musicology, the moment when Garbemon flies off and there's all this dramatic music playing, but also Garbemon's fart noises, like I thought that was both like absurd and kind of masterful in how absurd it was. Like
Yeah, I would lean toward the latter. Like I like it was absurd but masterful. I agree with you. Like Digimon, I feel like is so good at like just goofy uses of music like that. And I've kind of had mixed feelings about how I feel about the music in this. Partly because I'm used to the dub music for Adventure, which I mean probably is not good because of the way it's just so constant and doesn't always fit the mood. But like I have an affectionate feelings toward hearing Hey Digimon play when they just vanquished a villain or whatever. But that was always a weird mood whiplash is that you suddenly have this very chill rock song playing when they're like, about to kill Myotismon or whatever.
yeah, that scene in particular is like all about like vengeance and like finally like serving
Yeah.
up the arc villain, and then it's like cheerful, happy-go-lucky music, and it's like okay.
Yeah, it's specifically like I think it was Angewamon versus Myotismon
Mhm, mhm.
and the use of Hey Digimon there that was just like, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's kind of all my main thoughts about this episode. I think it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I like that it was fun and it felt like a fun episodic one, which is something I felt like in the attempts I'd made to sort of keep up on the show like before I kind of just was like I felt like none of those episodes had been like the kind of fun episodic stuff that I'd really
Yeah.
enjoyed about a lot of adventure before. And I mean I also liked the sort of like arcs amping up type stuff. But that's another thing that it kind of feels like I don't know if that's been a thing that has come across because I've only watched a handful of episodes, but the sort of like the way you could really easily separate adventure into arcs. Like there was the Devimon arc and then the Edamon arc and then the Myotismon one, and then the Dark Masters and then the ending stuff. Like can you do that with that or is it more continuous?
Yeah, not really. Like it's been very like basically the villain has been so backgrounded until it's like it's something that Koshiro basically calls in as like, guys, remember there's this thing that we need to do. It's like, okay, Koshiro, and then like the villain like rears their head for like a couple episodes and then they get defeated and then it's also silent for a while and then something rears his head for a couple episodes. So like it definitely feels yeah, like even like watching this episode on its own, like I think they make a reference or two to Millenniumon,
Yeah, they do.
but yeah, aside from that, it's like placing it in an arc would be like it kind of could go anywhere.
Yeah, and I always really liked the arc nature of the original one. Like, I liked that sort of balance between a lot of goofy one-off episodes, but there was always this constant sense of forward momentum. But it was still like the forward momentum in a sense was episodic. Like there was a moment when
Mhm.
things were calmer, and then they ramped up toward the end, kind of like Sailor Moon's season. Like I feel like that was a really common thing with Toei's action shows in the '90s.
Mhm.
That was the thing I liked about that too. But yeah, it was like I think I said I felt like it had some similar problems with Sailor Moon Crystal, although not to the same degree by any sense. Like this is way more watchable than that was. But the problem with Sailor Moon Crystal was they were drawing a lot of the like fun episodic stuff out of Sailor Moon. It was just kind of like boom, boom, boom. And this one kind of feel like this Digimon kind of feels weird, and that it's sort of doing that and sort of not doing that, because it still has episodes like this one. It just feels like it's so different in its approach from the adventure, like with the whole keeping things connected to the real world from the very beginning, like as opposed to in the original where it was really only during the Myotis monarch. And like just a totally different approach, unlike like Sailor Moon Crystal, which was like the manga faithful but also Cliff Notes approach.
Yeah, it's weird though, because like this fun and levity that in this episode, like basically did not exist until like 5 episodes ago. That was like the first sign
Yeah,
of it, kind of. So it's
it's like maybe they got some negative feedback and they're like, oh, maybe we should put this back in here.
yeah. But like that interplay between like filler, quote unquote, what people describe as filler and not filler and stuff, like I think that like that structure of being episodic but still moving the plot along is a really like important and strong
Yeah,
balance. And this show has been like either 100% what people call non-filler, like basically just plot after plot but not actually leading anywhere interesting the whole time, so it's like
yeah,
okay. Or it's been like this where it's like completely what everyone describes as filler, where it's like, okay, well, there's the overarching plot doesn't matter at all, and it's like, yeah, I think it lost that kind of structural magic the original show had.
yeah. It's and I also think like I often like filler episodes, or what people describe as them, but like I think they have to serve a particular purpose, even if they're not part of the larger plot. Like something is a breather. So like
Yeah.
I always think Utena is sort of the master of this with its like silly Nanami episodes, which I mean are not entirely filler, but kind of are, like how it drops like the silliest one, the one where she turns into a cow, like right in the middle of a particularly dark arc of the show, which is also my favorite arc of the show. But it gets dark, it gets twisted, then all of a sudden we're talking about Nanami turning into a cow because she bought herself a couture cowbell. Like it's just like filler has to be well placed.
Yeah, because I think like giving you that breather makes you even more excited when you come out of the breather.
Yeah,
And instead what the show has done has kind of been like running a marathon and not letting you
yeah.
breathe for like 30 episodes, and then just letting you lie on the floor and breathe constantly with no running at all. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like Digimon and also the original Sailor Moon were really good at the timing of those breathers. Like, it would be when things seemed to be getting darker, but not so much that like it would really distract from the main plot to do a breather. But it was right
Mhm.
when but you still needed it emotionally. Like I remember people always talk about how the Puppetmon part of the original adventure took forever. Like why did it take them so much longer to, defeat him than the other Dark Masters? But like I think a lot of that was because of filler, like the whole, Edamon is back thing. Um, and you kind of needed that silliness because like so much of the Dark Master arc was fittingly per their name, so dark.
Yeah, yeah, especially like the contrasting of like Yamato or Matt going off the deep end and
Yeah,
like betraying everyone, but then also there's like Metal Edamon and Puppetmon's poking his butt with his uh,
yeah. It helped
Pinocchio
that
nose.
Puppetmon was like the silliest of the Dark Masters.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into some three-word reviews for this episode. So at CRR McRae said, "Still no megas,"
At Drew Softman says solid waste management.
and Dak and Jackster said, "MacGyver level 100."
At Joseph Snosov said Tomb of Tiomon or Chumon, but I guess the alliteration works better if you say Tiomon here.
Yeah. Andy Lucas OE said, "Pot noodles saves everyone."
At Strike German 22 says 2020 a landscape.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about how the garbage being like the random real world garbage is like I think kind of a callback to the random weird real world artifacts in the original show, but
Yeah.
the way this episode made it more explicitly just like, oh, trash fell from the sky, it felt like Wall-E-esque to me. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
it gave me a bit of a Wall-E vibe too. Like, yeah.
like we have no space for landfills on Earth anymore, so let's just put it in the digital world. Like
Yeah,
that's
pretty much.
uh,
Or like that one episode of Futurama where they like expel all their trash into space.
I don't remember how that played out.
I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like the trash asteroid was like threatening to crash into Earth or something.
Yeah, it sounds right. At Ginryumon22 said, vital bracelet product placement. Yeah.
At CC Takato says, Gerbemon is great. I agree.
At Austin LC23, surprisingly good episode.
I agree with that too. At Ursum Roblek says, filler that's worthy. I agree with that too.
Yeah. No Thor's hammer though. I was like, feels like a Thor's hammer reference, but and finally at NNM Podcast, Frozen like Shin Godzilla, which I have not seen, but I guess I'm gonna
Yeah.
assume that happens in Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either. I will one day.
Yeah, the only relevant reference to that I appreciate is the recent memes that that Hideaki Anno is working on Tokusatsu, and people are just posting that like goodbye to Evangelion image with just like goodbye all of Evangelion. I'm only working on Tokusatsu now. Oh,
I just liked the joke I saw on Twitter the other day that was like, this is the plot of every Godzilla movie, and it was the meme with the orca whale that's like, I came out of the ocean because you need to stop. It's true. That is the plot of every Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Well, okay, so on to some listener comments and questions. First off, a comment from Andy Lucas OE, and he said, remember in Adventure 99 that Ty and Matt gave Leomon the ability to Digivolve to Mega? Now Izzy helps Chumon Digivolve to Searchmon. I really hope they explore this avenue more with the kids powering up allies to fight Millenniumon. You could even have a lesson about stranger danger and trust with them accidentally Digivolving a dishonest Digimon that poses as an ally but turns out to be Millenniumon's right-hand man. That's, I think, a pretty interesting concept. I think
Yeah.
I don't know about the like accidentally evolving the wrong Digimon. That seems...
I mean, it seems like something that they did sometimes trust the wrong guys, like, but in I don't know, Digimon was always at its funniest to me when it tried to be kids learning a lesson like that. But I don't know if it was very successful at that. I feel like kids are like people always underestimate how good kids are at figuring out when I'm saying we're because I'm projecting myself backward to when I was 9 years old watching the show. When they're being pandered to. I feel like kids pick up on that better than adults who make TV shows think. But hey, they could make it interesting and just like, don't be overly trusting. But on the topic of Searchmon, I was like confused at first at why Chumon would evolve into a bug, but then I kind of liked the idea that it intentionally did that in honor of Izzy Koshiro.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think especially the fact that it was a little bit too blatant how it was. Like, I think that Searchmon actually is an armor evolution of Wormmon with the Digimental of Knowledge. But the fact that it had the Crest of Knowledge on its back, and I was like, this is too blatant. Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
But it was cute that like Koshiro just inspired him to evolve.
And now Gerbemon has his own bug drone.
Yeah. Just gets carried around on a spinning disc, and that seems inconvenient, but oh well. At Dak and Jackster asked, there's a moment where Izzy lectures Gabumon about not being driven by revenge. Were Izzy's parents killed, and if so, does he low-key want revenge?
That's dark.
Yeah, it's dark, and like I can see the connection, because it does seem like the line that Koshiro like focuses on is the fact Gabumon wants revenge, and in the end he's like, no, you need to stop seeking revenge, and it's like, yeah, I don't know what they're going for with this. Like,
yeah, I mean, we did talk about that a little bit, but like it could be that, it could be also that he just doesn't like him being motivated by something other than pure knowledge and ingenuity.
Yeah, and like a mixture of like knowledge is good and the generic like revenge is bad, don't you know, like revenge is bad. Like but yeah, I mean, I really have no idea. I don't like reading into the tea leaves too much, because like,
yeah,
I don't think the show is going to deliver on anything big like that coming out of the blue at this point. And Austin LC23 asked, translation has been talked about before on the pod, but this episode's Tiyuman was a really moment. What do you think could be done to, quote unquote, fix this whole translation issue that keeps happening? And I think for this, it's not really a translation. It's not a translation problem. It's like a romanization taste kind of thing. Like, because this is I forget all the romanization schemes, but I think I forgot
the exact katakana for Chumon. I guess I could probably Google it right this moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is with like the character for like Chu can be I forget the different Japanese to English romanization schemes, because I think there are a couple that like where you would romanize that character as Tio, but
Hmm.
like it's literally written in Japanese with the character with a ta, a variant of the ta character. Like it's chi and then a u.
Yeah, it has chi. It has chi, and then the little u, and then the line, and then mo. So I learned to say that as chumon, but like,
Well, I think yeah, like chu is basically it's definitely the way you're supposed to pronounce it. It's just a matter
yeah,
of how you write it, and it looks like
yeah,
so Hepburn romanization uses the chu, but Nihon Shiki and Kunrei Shiki use tyu.
yeah. I don't know as much about the different. I know about Hepburn romanization, but not about the
Mhm.
different romanizations as much. Probably a thing I should look into a bit more in my adventure of learning Japanese.
But yeah, I think like those other ones where you would write it like that they're bad for like when you want to get the pronunciation across. Like they're like
Yeah,
correct literally, but like I was trying to think of other Digimon in the show that because like the same thing would apply to anything that has a sha sound. Like Shoutmon would be Xiaotomon.
like of course sometimes that is like a u sound. Like if you have like p and then a small u, it's pew.
Right. Or like Mew.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I think that it like I would find it absurd if like Shine Greymon appeared and it was Cyan Greymon. Like no.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. It's not a translation so much as a romanization problem and just like different romanization schemes. The wiki that I looked up does say it as does romanize it as Tiumon, but it also has Chumon as like the English name, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, because I think it's like according to like Bandai's official reference book, it is officially Tumon, but I think that's because it's written by someone who people who primarily speak Japanese and maybe know a little bit of English.
This is reminding me of the arguments in Yuri on Ice fandom about how to romanize various names.
Oh,
Yeah, like
was there controversy over that?
there was like particularly I remember there was one with Victor and if you should take and you should make his name with a K or a C and it's
Oh,
like both in terms of Japanese romanization and the Cyrillic alphabet either is fine. It's one character for both in both of those alphabets. I mean, I'm not an expert Russian, but this is my friends who
mhm.
speak it have told me, but I know Japanese in that regard. And then the other one that what did irritate me a little bit more in terms of what was the official one was Yuri Katsuki and the fact that there's a lot made of the fact that there's the Russian Yuri who's just Yuri and is like romanized as Yuri, just those two, and then Katsuki Yuri with the extra oo sound in the middle. And so I'm like, yeah, they probably should have romanized that as like Yuri or had something to distinguish it from just the Russian name Yuri.
Yeah.
Because the Japanese spells the two names differently.
Right, like the extra U sound or not. Yeah, that's yeah, it's tough because like I think what happens for just like Tumon is that they have a style guide and you just don't question the style guide, and even if it makes awkward things like this, and that's probably
Yeah,
what happens with like Yuri if you decide that like all double consonants should be a single, or
yeah.
not double consonants, double vowels should be a single one, and then it's like oh, but this one case it would be nice to
Make a distinction, yeah.
yeah. The next question from at Ginryu22. Will the Vital Bracelet chip be plot relevant? Is it possible it'll replace the crest to help Digimon reach Mega Form? And they also mentioned plot twist that Tai already has his smuggled in his hair somewhere.
His hair is so big, it's full of secrets.
Actually, they all have their chips in there. They all just like pull them out. Like,
Yeah. I don't know, I just had to think of Mean Girls in that moment.
oh, I need to rewatch that movie. It's been a while. It's been too long.
Yeah. I just always think of that when people talk about someone having huge hair. It's like, hair is so big, it's so full of secrets.
But yeah, I think this could be where they're going with the chip, the Vital Bracelet
Yeah.
chip. But it also, I hope it's just a one-off, like, oh, haha, funny product placement, and isn't too extreme because I think that'd be kind of cringy if it's like
Yeah.
actually how they evolve or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that doesn't become like, you can buy this thing, that just so happens to be what makes them mega form. It's like, oh god, okay.
Yeah.
I say as being like totally one of those people who like has a million like, crests of knowledge and sincerity like on my Etsy favorites that I totally might buy at some point. Like, so I'm totally the kind of person I'm complaining about.
And also, like, I was about to say, like, oh, well, then it's like, I mean, Digimon's always been toyetic, like, it's always been about
Yeah.
selling toys, but that would be too extreme. But then I thought about Precure, and like, people still, like, adults love Precure, even though it's like so much more blatant about this. It's like they all have like 5 different tools they have to use and like buy all the toys and of each of those
Yeah.
tools and stuff. So like I don't know. I guess it works fine,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It would feel strange in Digimon still. I'm not used to the idea yet. So
Yeah.
Ginryumon22 also asked, what do you think of the way Adventure 22 has ignored the virus data vaccine rules of original Adventure? Garbagemon having a passion, friends, a will for revenge makes him one of my favorite Digimon of the week for 2020, in contrast to his appearance in 1999 as just chaotic evil. I think there are like two main aspects to that, like that whole virus data vaccine weapon triangle thing. And like the first off is like the type advantage. I think the
Yeah.
type advantage is something that like is important in the games and in the show was just I think Adventure did mostly apply that. Like it was like
Hmm.
viruses always beat data and data always beat vaccine and vaccine always beat virus. But
I never knew there was a type advantage scheme to that, and this is the first I've heard of this.
it's so subtle and it's like I think most episode Adventure follow that format, but also like it's mainly because most of the protagonists are vaccine and most of the enemies are virus and the good guys beat the bad guys. So yeah, type
Yeah.
advantage. Like so I don't know. I feel like it was I don't particularly care about the type advantage in the show because it always felt a little bit I don't know, not half-assed, but like not actually it's not important to the text of the show. And in terms of the just personality informing things, like the fact that like virus Digimon are bad and vaccine Digimon are good.
Hmm.
That part is interesting, but what I find really weird about that is the data. Like they're like I feel like Digimon doesn't typically have neutral Digimon in that sense because I feel like there are a lot
Yeah.
of Digimon that are quote unquote data but are still good.
I always thought the good guys were data and vaccine, and the bad guys were virus, but there are always exceptions to that too.
And some of the best characters are exceptions to that, like
Yeah.
Imon or Guilmon. Guilmon's a virus type, so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of them being able to have their own personalities that are apart from just whatever type they are. And that, they are good or bad based on their own motivations. So,
yeah.
like, I get why people are bothered by that stuff, but I'm rarely ever bothered by that stuff unless it's just egregious sort of thing, like the way in Pokemon Pikachu can beat everything regardless of type.
Yeah, I think in it's disappointing for Digimon's perspective because it's disappointing in Digimon because it's like I don't like that kind of fatalistic view on morality. Like, oh, if you're
Yeah.
born this way, you're always gonna be bad. Like, yeah, it's more interesting when there's variety and
That's exactly what I think I was trying to say. Like, yeah, I don't like the idea of, you're required to be this because of something you can't control about yourself. Like, I like that they have agency.
yeah. Um, and then the final question was from @StrikeJamon22, asking about the the fact that like on the radio there was like a brief clip of it said like something about like the Prime Minister's statement, and then it cut off, and they're asking if we think the Prime Minister's statement was about the ISS, the power outage, Japan locking into the Matrix to go to war with the digital world. I don't know. I feel like if there was actually something important going on in the real world, Koshiro would be like for most of the show he's been keeping tabs on that. So
Yeah, he was just saying Edimon is the best Digimon villain.
yep, Japan has decided.
I was gonna make a joke at some point in this episode because I know we're getting near the end about upcycling. When people like make stuff out of
Mhm.
garbage and they call it upcycling, make crafts and stuff, and like that would have been my three-word reviews. Izzy learns upcycling.
Yeah, I feel like all the news I hear out of Japan these days is like their vaccine rollout is terrible, or everything the Olympics planning committee says is terrible and
Yeah,
sexist, and so I don't know. News out of Japan is not inspiring at the moment. So
yeah. If the prime minister did say something about his favorite Digimon, that would be much better
oh
than
yeah.
everything else coming out of Japan right now.
So yeah, before we close out the episode, how would you rate this episode out of 5 packets of magical oil hardening powder available at your local Japanese convenience store today?
I would give it a 5. I thought this was, by the standards of the show at least, it was good.
Hmm.
That's what I'm rating it based on the standard of previous Adventure 2020 episodes.
Okay, that's a glowing review, but I guess it makes sense if it's the best one you've seen. So,
Yeah.
I am so conflicted because like I do think it had a lot of strengths and like we were really positive about it. But like when I finished it, I was the first time I was like, oh, was that it? I feel like nothing happened. Oh, so, um, so I'm like overall my impression is not. I'm not that excited about it. Like it was fine. So I think I'm
Mhm.
gonna give it like a 3.5 stars.
Okay.
Um, and who would your MVP for the episode be?
I mean, Koshiro ended up saving the day, so it should be him. But like, maybe I think I'll go with Koshiro. I was trying to think of a funny alternative, but then it's just like it's Koshiro.
Yeah, also this episode very minimal cast. It's
Yeah.
Koshiro, the 2 Digimon they're saving, and an enemy that doesn't talk. And
And
Taichi's there,
Ty's
I guess, in
just
the
yeah, he's
background.
just kind of there.
He's there and like moving a cart around for no reason.
He's emotional support.
Yeah. I like how like Koshiro just like takes over Metal Greymon. Like, Taichi, don't worry, just don't do anything. I'll take Metal Greymon from here. Like,
Yeah.
um, I guess I'm gonna give it to Gerbemon actually, like because Koshiro like saved the day, but Gerbemon I was more surprised by actually giving some like positive characterization to and making him a little hero.
Yeah, I liked him being a good guy.
And I liked the just like the whiplash, like when I first heard about this episode title, it's like King of Inventors, Garbemon? What? That's not what I would have thought expected out of the show. So but yeah, next week is episode 44. Is that right? No, 43?
43.
Yeah. So next week is episode 43 titled Clash, the King of Digimon. And it seems like Edamon and Volcamon, the heated match over the King of Digimon title begins. So it seems like there is going to be some singing-ish competition, or at least holding microphones. And definitely Edamon, definitely Volcamon. I don't know. What were your thoughts when you saw this preview?
I was like, this just sounds like a wild ride, and I like that there's a dad joke, even if it was kind of botched a bit.
Oh yeah, Koshiro's that thing about Nanimon. Yeah, that was awkward because yeah, the original Japanese was a joke about like Nanimon's name being like literally like what Nani, and he's like what the heck is Nanimon, and then he ends up saying instead of like what the heck he ends up saying Nanimon twice. So he's like so I guess they kind of handled the joke kind of well, making it about like how macho Nanimon was, and then like I don't know.
Nani-mon.
Yeah.
They should have expected that anime fans would pick up on that. I mean, I feel like Nani is such a meme in like American anime fandom by this point.
Yeah, that's true, huh? Because they couldn't really handle the fact that like Nanimon's attack is like throwing poop or whatever, and so they were like they kind of left that joke in, like he said like Unchi poop. Oh no, he's gonna throw poop, and they could have done that with Nani as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, I think I'm excited for Edamon's appearance. I did not expect him to actually ever appear in this show, so it caught me off guard. But I'm also trepidatious. I'm worried he's not actually going to be that funny. I'm worried he's going to just be like.
He has big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Like especially, I think a lot of that fun characterization was added by the English dub, so I haven't revisited that part in Japanese in a long time. So I'm not sure how fun he was in Japanese in the original.
Yeah, I have never seen Adventure in Japanese, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was still Elvis themed there.
Maybe we will get that officially subtitled in English someday, because
I
think it's on Crunchyroll in some European territories recently. So like it's out there. I mean, maybe release it in other territories too. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
But oh well. Yeah. Okay. So I think that brings us to the end of the show this week. Last week's Digiprompt was: if you were to design a Digimon-themed amusement park, what would be the main attraction? And my favorite response came in from @AguChamp64, and they said, X-Antibody theme park that has spikes and insane amounts of details in every ride. Nothing is comfortable. Even the soft drinks have sharp ice crystals. And that's I love that answer because it's the most Digimon, very Digimon. But there are also some fun honorable mentions. At BRCN mentioned a Commandamon ride, which would be great. That actually, Rose, is one thing you missed out in this episode, is not seeing Commandamon. I'll send you a picture because they've been riding around on this giant dog bus thing, and it is very cute. It's a bit like Appa from Avatar: Last Airbender.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I would want to go on a Commandamon ride.
And it has like an interior space too. So I guess that's why their little goggles. That's like the windows.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's one fun bit of like levity the show has had for a while. So
it's like Appa combined with the cat bus.
Oh yeah, Appa bus. And also at Moglord mentioned a Digivolution themed roller coaster where you would basically go through the stages of Digivolution as you went through the roller coaster. And Strike22 mentioned a haunted house where you would basically deal with the Digimon Tamer's concept of Digimon biomerging, and you having to deal with a man in a Digimon costume scaring you. Which very, very cool ideas for theme park rides. And this week's Digiprompt is in honor of the recent stream of second partner candidates for most of the kids. What chosen child would you pair with a different existing Digimon, and why? And you can send those responses or general feedback to podages@gmail.com, to @podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on podages.com. Share the podcast with your friends who can hook up a freezing bazooka to your arm when you need it, and it would be awesome if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, and each review helps a ton. If this is your first episode, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you find podcasts. So, Rose, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
And if people want to find more of you in the digital world, where can they check you out?
You can check me out on Twitter @ComposeRose. I have been kind of on a break from Anime News Network reviewing because I'm working on my PhD dissertation on anime soundtracks. But you can always look up my old stuff if you just go to animenewsnetwork.com and Google Rose Bridges.
Cool. Awesome.
Search Rose Bridges. Oh yeah, I do have another new publication that I totally forgot to announce on Twitter, but I have an article that was recently released in Macademia, which is an anime and manga studies journal. They had a this spring they had a new issue come out on soundscapes as the theme of it. So lots of stuff dealing with music and sound, and I have an article on the anime of Ikuhara, particularly Utena and Saranzanmai in that issue.
Cool. Awesome. And I am at Jeff on Twitter, and you can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It a Wee Bit, where this past week we released episodes on Skate Leading Stars and Kimono Jihen. And this upcoming week, we're going to be releasing episodes on a couple other shows from the remainder of last anime season, and also a full review of the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen, which was really fun. Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening. I'll be back next week to talk about episode 43, Clash, the King of Digimon. Bye.
Bye.
And remember, never stop Digimon. The kind of related note that always bothers me in the Digimon fandom is that for some reason the spelling that everyone goes with for Koshiro is the first O is long and the second one isn't, but in Japanese both of them are long.
Yeah, Koshiro.
But the official subtitles at least say just a single O for both of them. So
yeah, and it's like people probably get mad at that. I'm like, just be consistent about it. I get the problem with saying something like shoujo as just one O for both, because I think there's another Japanese word that is that, but then people go too far and they go shoujo. I'm like, no, only the first one is long.
yeah, that's I don't know. I find the argument that you can't write shoujo with one O because it's without the U because it's then it becomes the same as the other Japanese word, and I'm like, okay, but if you're talking about writing for an audience that doesn't know Japanese,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always in my academic writing about it try to be exact, just because there is a chance that the people reading it might be able to call my bluff on that. But yeah, I think it's pedantic to be too picky about it if that's not who the audience is. I don't know. I'm still trying to get people to stop editing my stuff to add an accent to anime. So yeah, lots of musicologists who don't understand anime they'll edit it in program booklets. I'm like, that's not right. It's not French. It's a French loan word, but it's not a French word.
Wait, do they put it on the E?
On the E, yeah. Because if you were saying the French word, you'd do that. But I always try to explain Japanese. It's that sound anyway. They don't do accents.
Oh, you know what also probably hurts that case is Pokemon.
Yeah, because Pokemon has the accent too. Yeah. So yeah, that might be why they're doing it, is that they take their cue from Pokemon. But I also think it's that a lot of musicologists know French and they don't. Like French, German, and Italian are sort of the most common languages in my field, and so they're just applying rules from that to other languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry for going off course.
It's okay. I can talk about language stuff all day, and someone did ask us a language question. And I have an article on the anime of Ikuhara, particularly Utena and Saranzanmai, in that issue.
Cool, awesome. Has there been any announcements of what he's working on next?
I don't think so. I mean, I thought there was a new Penguin Drum thing coming out.
Oh, yeah, there was.
But I think he's also working on a new show. Can you imagine if Ikuhara directed Digimon? That would be wild.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, boy, that's too much of exactly what I want, that I'm scared to even think about it.
Yeah. I don't think I feel like there's probably some bad blood between him and Toei, considering how he left Sailor Moon. But possibly, but who knows? Maybe he will do something like that one day. Him doing a franchise would be interesting. Yeah. And doing it again, because he did Sailor Moon before that. But I don't think that's what he wants to do, because he was so hemmed in with what he could do on that show.
Yeah, and I feel like his trend has been going to shorter and shorter shows, right? So and
also getting weirder and weirder and weirder.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting if he did like a monster show.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be like actually Digimon, but just like his own spin on it.
Yeah, I feel like Tokusatsu or Kamen Rider and Pretty Cure have both been like good about getting bigger name directors into
Yeah.
working on them, and Digimon has not really done that, unfortunately.
It's probably I'm guessing it's probably they have too many specifications.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm always surprised that like Chiaki Konaka of Serial Experiments Lane fame,
Yeah.
like he recently came back to Twitter for
Oh, he
first
did.
time in a while. Like he kind of left Twitter for a while, I think because he was mad that people were asking him questions about Digimon a lot. But like he came back and I'm just surprised that he seems so invested in Digimon fans and like talking about Digimon and stuff. And I'm like, but dude, you did Lane. Isn't Lane the bigger thing? And like, but
I mean, I like both of them, but I personally like Tamers better than Lane, so whatever.
hmm.
I'm fine with him investing his time in that. I mean, I just have at least some bigger emotional attachment to it. Like, I like Lane, but it kind of leaves me a bit cold.
Yeah, it's not it's very like there's not much to like actually grapple on for like characters. It's like
Yeah, it's high concept stuff, and basically just that.
yeah, and it gets like some things about the way the internet has evolved kind of right, and other things just completely wrong. So
Yeah, it was a lot more optimistic, I think, about the internet bringing us together than the internet actually was.
yeah.